We are live, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode 589er. Monday, May 1. Mayday. 2017, it's the pre-show. This is the time of the show where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and we say outrageous things. So, Brian, who's doing the interview? You?
I thought it was going to be Harold Brooks. So I wasn't even prepared for Dr. Myers and Kevin Laws.
Well, I thought it was Harold Brooks too. Well, that's cool. I was looking at the Google Calendar here, and it says,
yeah, I know, but in Bill's email, he included Dr. Myers and Kevin Laws about possibly postponing till tomorrow night since he's stuck in traffic. So that's why I figured it wasn't Harold Brooks. I don't know. Well, I just work here.
Darn, man. I love Kevin and Laura, but Harold, let's see what it says here. Declining lead time, Kevin Laws and Laura Myers. Apparently it's changed.
What is this declining lead time?
It was some piece that Jason Samenow wrote in the Capital Weather Gang.
And where's he getting those statistics?
I don't know, but I got a call from some national deal, and they quoted me in this big article about it. Where, I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see that we're on a plateau, but I just can't believe it's declining.
I'm trying to find Kevin on here.
That just goes to show what I know about weather.
See if I can get Laura on here.
I'm not even finding that story.
Search like Capital Weather Gang.
Yeah, I'm on their website, and I don't see.
You have to do it. Let me do some Google foo. Here we go. Americans are getting less advance notice for tornadoes. I'll drop in the chat room here.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, I was close.
Struggle to understand why. April 20th. And Harold is quoted as in here. Experts reject the idea that forecasters have become less skilled at predicting tornadoes. Anyway,
since 2011, both tornado lead time and detection have gotten worse.
Laura, this might be the worst show ever. I'm sorry.
Why was that?
Well, Bill's not here, and Bill typically does the NPR style interview, and whenever we have to get involved, it's more of the morning zoo crew kind of thing. So,
oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah. And I think everybody else is on here. I think, to my knowledge, everybody's supposed to be here except for Bill Murray. So that's good. We got if Rick can be on here, that'll be good. And Kevin's always good for some crankiness. And Nate, we haven't had Nate on the show in like 3 months. Brian, who made him mad?
I don't know.
He sends a note every week. He's got kid issues, and I can I'll be the first to say I can fully understand that. At his phase in life, it's a challenge to do this do this kind of show at this hour of the evening. So, but anyway, no, we're going to talk about and again, Laura, Bill, and I, or Brian and I, thought that Harold Brooks was going to be on too, but apparently he's not.
He would have been good.
Which is fine. We'll
not that we don't like you.
No, we're honored that you're here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, as usual.
So,
okay, why have I lost your picture?
Whose picture?
Well, you sent me that link and I opened it. Now I can't seem to get back to the picture of you guys.
We got Dr. K. Laws is on here with us.
I'm going to close and see what happens.
Kevin,
Hello.
How you doing, man?
Oh, well, hang on. I got to figure out how to get the sound through these
I'm back.
And I don't see an astronomy report from Tony Rice.
No, but you do have a 101.
I do have a 101. Last week, we didn't have a 101. We had the astronomy report, so we'll just flip it this week.
You know those astronomers and weather people, you can't trust them.
No.
Hey, have you ever noticed how the Atlanta Braves A looks an awful lot like the University of Alabama's A?
It really does.
I have not, but I'm sure it does.
Well, that was my impression today when I saw them on a large screen TV, the Atlanta Braves, that is. And it wasn't a side-by-side comparison, but it sure looks similar.
Rick Smith is on the air everywhere.
All right, there's Rick.
I am.
Gotta love that Oklahoma weather. Snow, flooding, severe weather, hot, cold, windy.
A little bit of everything. Yeah. Yesterday was crazy on the kind of on the backside of that big upper level low. We would have a shower, pouring down rain, and then the sun would be out, and then the winds blowing 40 miles an hour from all different directions. It was even for Oklahoma standards, it was crazy.
Awesome. Well, this is cool. So yeah, Bill's not going to be here, so this will be a free for all. I probably need to read this article a little more in detail. No, there was some. I'm trying to find the one that I was in. Yeah, I get these weird calls from random journalists sometimes, and if I happen to be in the car driving to a school, I can talk with them. and if I'm not, then I can't. Let's see. I want to say, yeah, this is it. So what is this? The Christian Science Monitor. Tornado watchers are missing more storms, giving shorter notice and saving more lives, question mark. And I vaguely remember talking to this guy, which is kind of dangerous. My schedule is so bad in the spring. It's just, you get so tired. And it's just like, I'm telling you, I am so thankful that we didn't have to stay up here all night last night, because I was about at the end of my existence, because, last weekend we had the 8A game. I had to work, and then, we had the severe weather that followed the 8A game. And then I had to work a Sunday shift, and we had all kind of other non-weather things on Sunday. And then this has been one of the toughest 2-week stretches I've had in a while. So, but I got some sleep last night, so I'm good.
That always helps.
And then
sleep may be for sissies, but it's good to have it once in a while.
Yeah, it's going to go right back down the tubes. I got to do a MC the Hoover prayer breakfast tomorrow, so I've got to get up at like 3:30 to do the production, so I can be.
Oh my goodness!
Time. And then got to go to a school on the other side of the state, but it's all good. Look, I would rather be busy than bored. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about it. I love what I do. It's a great job. Aubrey, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud.
We can.
Okay, good, because I was just tapping on my microphone. I couldn't get anything, so I'm sorry for the noise.
Boy, loud and clear. This is great.
You always make a loud entrance there.
Thank you. I try. Look at how much humidity there is. Look at all the frizz.
Wow.
We've actually got a humid day here.
Show title.
Yeah.
Not stormy, but humid.
I try and hide my frizz, Brian.
I always hide my frizz.
You guys do it very well. You'll have to let me know your secret.
Of course, Brian wears a toupee. That's a good looking toupee you got there, Brian.
Thank you.
Very nice. I would wear one, but I'm too cheap to buy the good toupee glue. It would blow halfway to East Taboga on days like today.
That stuff can get expensive per tube.
We'll start this thing as soon as we hit the television side here, which should be in like 20 seconds or so. So I'm watching intently. We already have people watching on the web. We never shared a boring personal story. Brian, you got a boring story you want to share?
I have an interesting story.
Well, no, I want a boring story.
Oh, okay.
No, we'll hold that for the show here since we're so close.
I drove 250 miles yesterday.
And you done good, man. You were in the middle of it.
Well, I try.
Pickens County, Alabama. That was some good live television.
Yeah. By the way, to the rest of the group, James sends me a note and says, "Just find us a tornado." so I send back an email, and no pressure there, boss.
No, you did the best you can do. Well, welcome to our viewers on the television side. This is James. It is WeatherBrains time. This is Monday, May 1st. We're about to get this thing going, so let's get it started. And if I've got to be involved in the official hosting here, we got to be sure we get out on time. Somehow I got to figure I'm the lead story. Weather is the lead like almost every night now. But we might have I guess it's going to rain Thursday. So there we go. All right. Anyway, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 589. The weekly show that's all about weather. Thanks a lot for taking the time to listen or watch. Some of you do both. And for those that do both, we figure they probably don't have a life, but that's okay. We don't either. We're a bunch of weather weenies here, and we gather around this digital mahogany table once a week to talk weather. And we've been doing this for 11 long years, Brian Peters. 11 long but good years.
Oh, yes. It just doesn't seem like it's been that long.
No, just like it was yesterday.
It really doesn't.
So you were out in the midst of the storm yesterday. People think you have the coolest job.
I do.
You know, we stand in this room with no windows, and we can't see anything, and you are out in the middle of the storm. How awesome is that?
Catching all the action I possibly can. That was an interesting bow echo, and I was right in the middle of it. That was great.
And the winds really weren't that bad where you were.
No.
No.
And the damage that occurred in Aliceville was actually pretty minimal. And actually, you remember the church that you showed the picture of?
Yes.
You know, when you really look at that, I can explain how that happened, and it's could have happened with a rather low wind speed, I think.
Yeah, we figured it probably was not, the winds were not that excessive there, but we had a good old QLCS come through. Brian was in there trying to find the whack-a-mole tornadoes, and it was one of those days where we had to cut off an NBA basketball. This is the other good thing about Brian. See, Brian was 80 miles away from this chaos that we had here in the studio. So whenever a tornado warning goes for any county in my television market, we go on the air. And here's one thing that just really ticks me off. It's these, and I've said this in here before, and I don't want to get on my soapbox, but in many markets, television stations, they'll go wall to wall for counties where there are a lot of meters, diaries, where the ratings happen. They will stay on the air the whole time. But the minute the tornado gets into a rural county where maybe there's 2 meters or 1 diary, they go right back to Freak of the Week or, you know, whatever's on television. And so my question is, if you live in the rural area, is your life not important? And apparently it's not, based on their way of thinking. And we don't play that game here. And I'm not going to call names or anything, but I will say we had a significant EF3 tornado in East Texas over the weekend. Brian used to work in Fort Worth, and I used to work in Dallas. And this came up in Van Zant County, a town called Canton, which is along Interstate 20. And it was rough. It killed 5 people. And I'll just leave it at this. You know, a lot of the Dallas television stations did not provide wall-to-wall long-form coverage for the tornado warning for Van Zant County. Van Zant County is in the Dallas-Fort Worth television market. It is the easternmost county. If you go 1 county over, you get into Smith County and the Tyler-Longview market. That's a separate market in East Texas. But my question to these guys is, what's the matter with you? And I'm not faulting the weather guys. This is a call that's, you know, above their head. This is made up at the top level by some general manager that's just, we're going to have to show Inside Edition instead of tornado warning for Van Zandt County or freak of the week or whatever. And I've shared my story about some of the weird stuff I've interviewed or I've interrupted. These weird shows, Brian. Like Ricky Lake.
Yeah.
Oh.
I always like it Monday through Friday when you interrupt those ladies' stories.
But anyway, I'm not going to go down that path. But so back to our deal here.
Can I ask you something about that?
Yes.
Speaking of which,
by the way, this is Kevin Laws, who is the Science Operations Officer at the National Weather Service in Birmingham, one of the smartest guys in this enterprise. Go.
Please. I was thinking about, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about Channel 8. Did they use their new warning format?
That's it. Well, look, we need to get those guys on the air. I would love to get the chief meteorologist, is a guy named Pete Delkus. And I'm going to get Bill Murray on this to get him on the show to, number one, ask him that question. I don't have an answer, Kevin, if they use their new warnings from this. What's the name of this company?
I don't remember.
I can't remember the name, but goodness. Anyway, it's a company that issues their own warnings. And Channel 8's going to start using this company instead of the National Weather Service. And I would love to know if they use the new warnings from this private firm. Well, Metloop, that's the name of this thing. And I would also like to know why they weren't on the air, not doing wall-to-wall coverage. And I know they weren't on the air because I saw a whole lot of social media traffic wanting to know about that. And 5 people were killed. This was a big deal. So you live in Canton, Texas. So your life is less important than somebody lives in Plano or Arlington or Fort Worth or wherever. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. And again, please, I'm not faulting the weather people. This is probably coming from somebody up over in their head. But in our case, Brian, we had to cut off NBA basketball. You were 80 miles away.
Yes.
And this was a county 80 miles away. It is the far western county in my television market. And our friends down at the Weather Service pulled the trigger on a tornado warning. And I don't blame them. I think it was a good call. And so we had to cut off some playoff game on Sunday. And man, and I try and get it. One thing I try and do now is get ahead of these guys. Just get a little ahead of them. I wrote them a little letter on Facebook and put it out on Twitter. Dear NBA fans, and I did that about 30 minutes before it happened because I could see that train coming. But it was pretty brutal. I mean, these NBA guys, man, they're nasty. They send these F-bombs, and you talk about your family and stuff. It is just brutal stuff.
Very interesting, James. Very interesting, James.
What?
It's very interesting. I'm on Pete Delkus's Twitter feed, and according to him, he was on television with constant coverage.
Well, I went to their website because I was watching it live. Well, I was watching it on GR2, and I went to their Radarscope or something, and I went to their website, and there's not a way to stream that I saw. So I was interested to see what they would do with that format.
Yeah.
Or with the warnings, and I couldn't find a way to stream it, so I couldn't really tell if they were wall to wall or not.
Well, his Twitter feed doesn't include anything about warnings at all. I'm back to the 29th.
I don't know if you can see it. I'm screen sharing from Kyle Roberts' Twitter feed, who's a meteorologist at WFAA. Used to be here in Oklahoma City. And I think that's an example. They were using the focus area sub warning, or I don't know what they're calling it. But can you see that example there?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that white polygon
I hadn't scrolled down far enough.
Focus area. So this is the Metloop thing that they were using. There was other tweets out there that have the Weather Service polygons, but this is just the first example I could find. So,
yeah, I would love to take a look at the time that was captured and some other things. But this is a note. If you're watching on the video stream, this is a note posted to their Facebook page. And understand, I'm not knocking Pete or anybody at Channel 8. I'm not saying it's their fault. I don't think it is. I think it's their management's fault. During the glory days, Channel 8 was the gold standard. They were the Below Broadcasting gold standard of television, local television. But this note said, I'm very disappointed that except for a few short breakaways, WFAA stopped covering the deadly storm in Van Zandt County Saturday evening as soon as Pete Delkus' 6 o'clock weather segment was over. It appears station management thought sports and Inside Edition were far more important than warning people of serious weather and impending tornadoes. Thank goodness for Channel 11 and especially Channel 5 that provided precise and timely warnings throughout the most dangerous portion of the evening. Channel 8 was a no-show until it showed up later in the evening to cover the damage. So, and I've seen other notes similar to that. So that just, again, just seems like maybe, we still got this problem. But anyway, that's not the main topic of the evening. But so Aubrey, good to have you back. Let's move on here. Aubrey, how you doing? You look good tonight. Great. You're sounding good.
I'm doing great. I hope you guys are doing well too. So
how's your hair?
It's still a little frizzy. We have a dew point of 64, which is pretty high for here.
Yeah, especially May 1st. That's pretty great. So did you have any severe weather today?
No, we were high shear, very low cape, just too much cloud cover throughout the day, and they were all around us, but nothing. Well, we got a little storm and a couple gusty showers, but that's it.
We'll talk about this more in the weather roundup here in just a little bit. But Rick Smith is the WCM of the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma. What a week it's been for you, huh?
Been a busy week. Friday night and into Saturday morning, we had big time severe weather here. Just wave after wave, 5 or 6 different waves of thunderstorms came through the Oklahoma City metro area. We had one wave that hit around 5 a.m., probably 80, 90 mile an hour winds, widespread swath of damage, all kinds of stuff. The fairgrounds has this big arch there, this big historic thing that's been there forever that was blown over, trees everywhere, huge amounts of damage, just a wide swath of 70, 80, possibly 90 mile an hour winds. So that was a rude awakening for many people Saturday.
Yeah, and you've had snow in the western part of the state, and boy, it's been a pretty wild series of days here. But anyway, Bill Murray is not here. Bill typically does the formal NPR type interview segment where we get smooth and steady on the show here. But I guess I'll kind of fill in. Let's bring in Dr. Laura Myers, social scientist on the staff at the University of Alabama, the faculty. Dr. Myers, thanks for taking the time to join us this evening.
Thank you. I'm always glad to be with you guys.
You have been a great help to all of us, and we have many questions for you tonight. And Kevin Laws, the Science Operations Officer, the SOO for the National Weather Service in Birmingham, Alabama, joins us on the show. Kevin, thanks for your time.
Yes, sir. I'm on shift tonight, but no better way to spend it.
I'm about to say, so you're on the night shift this week, huh?
No, I'm just filling in. Someone had a death in the family, and so I'm filling in to doing the weather balloon this week. So it's always fun.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Love that job.
It's already out, isn't it? Already up?
Yeah, we set it up. The time change, we do it at 6 and 6, so it went up at 6 p.m. Yeah, so it just finished up about 45 minutes ago.
Awesome.
Takes about 2 hours.
So I think what prompted this subject, and again, with Bill not being here, we'll just kind of talk our way through this, but our friends up at the Capital Weather Gang, let me do a screen share here. They had a piece in the WAPO. Americans are getting less advance notice for tornadoes as researchers struggle to understand why. And Jason interviewed Harold Brooks, our friend at NSSL, and apparently there has been a little drop in the lead time, the tornado warning lead time. Looks like it peaked, and again, I would assume this is nationally, from about 15 minutes in 2011 down to 8 minutes in 2015. So first off, Kevin Laws, would you say that this information is accurate? And if so, why the drop?
Probably so. I mean, there could be tons of reasons why. You got to remember 2011 too was a big year, right? A lot of supercells. Obviously, we all remember that. So that sort of skews your numbers quite a bit. In the research that we've done here, same thing happened. 2011 was our biggest lead time year just because it's so skewed because of all the supercells. I mean, it's just, they're easy. I can get the polygons out 60, 65 minutes ahead. The lead time for Tuscaloosa tornado on April 27th was 63 minutes. So that's obviously going to skew the numbers to be a larger lead time. I can't remember right off the top of my head. I want to say our average lead time in 2011 was probably about 30 minutes thanks to that. So it just naturally drags that number up. Since then, we've seen quite a decrease as well. So we're not unlike the national average here. I don't think we're at 8. I think we're more about 10 for 2015. But nonetheless, it's come down quite a bit since then. It's mostly due to, in my opinion, storm type. But there's a couple other factors as well.
It just seems to me, most tornadoes are EF0s and EF1s. And we all know that that's tough. It's tough. Sometimes if you get a 2-minute lead time, that's doing pretty good. So is that the main deal? We're just not getting as many strong, violent tornadoes where you can see them far in advance?
That could be part of it. But let me tell you a big thing that I don't think somebody's taken into account, and it's just total scientific thing, is that what else big happened in 2012? That was the dual pole. So now we're seeing every tornado that occurs. And the fact that you're seeing every one, if you happen to miss one, that goes into the database as a 0 lead time. So that also would bring your numbers down. So I've been kind of curious to see what's going to happen to the actual statistics now that we can see every single little everything. I mean, I don't think any of us, and Rick, you could chime in, but I don't think any of us had any idea that the dual pole was going to work so well. I guess, you guys and Norman were probably using it more in an experimental mode for quite a while, but I didn't have any idea that we'd be able to see EF0s from, 50, 60 miles away, but we're actually able to do that very easily. So it could be the fact that we're seeing more, and I think the numbers are going to artificially jump up just because of the technology jump. Could be.
Rick, what are your thoughts?
I kind of agree with Kevin. I mean, it's a complex subject, and it's hard to boil things down to one number or one statistic that tells the whole story. I know historically, in years, I'm speaking for our office specifically, historically, years when we don't have a lot of big supercells, and contrary to popular belief, that's not all we get. We get the QLCS junk. We get the nighttime stuff. We get stuff, maybe not as frequently as you guys do in Alabama, but we do get that here. In years where we don't have those big classic Oklahoma type supercells, our warning verification statistics suffer. The probability of detection is lower because those are harder to detect. Those, over 80% of our tornadoes are EF0 and EF1. And they're harder to detect. They're harder to get lead time for. So in years where we have more of those, when we have those years where we have fewer of those big supercells that, like Kevin mentioned, that you can get a lot of lead time on, we notice that in our local warning statistics here.
So let me back that up too, because the statistics that's just what they are. They're just numbers. So a great example of that is, all the work we've done since 2011 here. Well, 2013 was one of our worst years ever as far as false alarms and POD. I bet nobody really realizes that, but guess what? In 2013, we only had 13 tornadoes. So we were so far below our average that it sort of skewed the statistics to make our overall false alarm numbers appear worse because we didn't have that many opportunities. I think out of the 13 tornadoes we had in 2013, every single one was a squall line tornado, almost every single one. So the supercell tornadoes actually help bring your numbers up to a more legitimate average. So it's just when you have very few numbers to deal with, it automatically brings your statistics down, and it just hurts your averages overall.
So let's go back to the social side of this thing. So, and again, this is national. This, every office will vary. But according to Jason's piece here, the tornado lead time has dropped from 15 minutes to 8 minutes. So, Dr. Myers, what is the optimal lead time for a tornado warning? What's the goal here? What's too much lead time? What's not enough? What's the right number?
Well, several people have asked about what is the sweet spot, and the sweet spot for lead time has a lot to do with either side of that equation. So 8 minutes really doesn't give people enough time for the psychological processes they're going to go through. And so the sweet spot's really been kind of designated as the 10 to 15 minute mark. And then over 15 minutes, when we start going to 20, 25, 30, then we start getting people becoming complacent with it because they're waiting for it. And so that's the swing side of the issue. So it's really the 10 to 15 minute mark where we think we can get people's attention and get them to act the most.
One of our problems, and I guess you take this into consideration, where we are, and I'd say we in the southern U.S., Oklahoma, Alabama, we have a number of our folks that live in mobile homes, and a mobile home is a death trap during a tornado. And that, in some cases, they live in an isolated plot of land that the family's owned for generations. And to go to the nearest site-built home or the nearest shelter, it's going to take a while. Does that come into play, Laura, and these numbers you're giving us? What about people live in mobile homes that have to go somewhere to go into a safe place?
Well, they do need a lot more time. And in fact, they should be taking action during the watch as opposed to the warning. And so they really need much more advanced information. But then again, what we're seeing in a lot of the assessments that we're doing is they're not doing that because, again, they don't want to take action unless they have to. And so when we start talking about how much time we give them, it's really trying to get them to understand that they can't be in that location. And that's the harder issue, not so much the amount of lead time.
And that's, in fact, let me just kind of stop on this subject for this is very interesting to me because so many people, such a large percentage of our population live in mobile homes away from larger cities. My question is, let's say that I live in one and I'm kind of out in the country. What should I do if I don't have an on-site shelter, some kind of a safe place right there on the site? What do I do when there's a tornado watch issue? Do you go to a shelter then? Or what would your advice be, Laura, to somebody who lives in a mobile home that's isolated out in the rural part of the Deep South?
During a watch, they need to have already designated a place to go. They need to have a relative or a friend somewhere in a close region to them that they can get to. And they need to have a plan for that. And they need to go there during the watch. If they don't have a strong structure that they can get to, then they need to go somewhere in the local town and get to a strong structure there. People go to churches, they go to the Walmart, the Home Depots, just trying to find a sturdier structure. And so they need to pre-identify that. And that's one of the things we've been working on is trying to do outreach with people who live in these type of circumstances to go on and make a pre-plan like that to figure out where would they go during a watch.
And let me kind of go back to Rick and Kevin. You guys are working at the Weather Service. What's your goal in terms of lead time? Dr. Myers is talking about a sweet spot being 10 to 15 minutes. Is that the goal, Rick Smith, at your place?
Well, I can't say that we're aiming for 15 minutes. I mean, I think our overall, in the heat of battle, we're trying to get as much warning out there as possible. So it's not like in my office, we're not thinking, well, let's hold off. We don't want to give them 30 minutes. Let's wait 10 more minutes and we'll hit the sweet spot. If we can give 30 minutes, we're going to give 30 minutes. But one of the issues is, and to this with the mobile home issue, is people have there's a lot of different people using these warnings. And some people need 10 minutes. If you've got a shelter in your garage, you could do with a minute. If you're a hospital, you need 2 hours. So it's a very complex situation. So basically, we're trying to give all the lead time we can. So it's not a conscious effort on our part to hit a sweet spot per se. We want to give as much as we can, but we do know that when we do a 45-minute warning or a 60-minute warning, we hear after the fact that people get confused. The siren goes off once, they take shelter. The siren goes off again. They think nothing's happened for 15 minutes. They think that's an all clear. They come out of shelter. Then they're confused. And so there's definitely real world issues that come with those long warnings.
Kevin, what do you say?
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's exactly what I was going to say too. And you know this as well as I do, there's such a diversity of users of this information. I met with the people a few years ago at Children's Hospital, and you could imagine the kind of lead time they would like or need to pull the hospital beds or whatever into the hallways. What if you have a large venue? Let's just say this weekend coming up is Talladega, right? So what if we have a situation where Talladega needs heads up, because I can promise you they're not going to postpone or cancel a race. So what kind of lead time would they need versus, someone in a well-built, site home who would prefer the 10 minutes. Brian, were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree, because I don't think even if they shut down the race that the spectators would leave.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, think about this. You've seen Talladega, and look at all the people out there and campers and tents and, out in those fields. And they always have that race, what is it, the first weekend in May? And it's just a matter of time before that's going to be a disaster. I mean, the first weekend in May, we're still almost in the heart of our season. So, it's sort of wrapping up, but not quite. So, and the second race is in October, a little early for us, but it's not unheard of. So it's just going to be a matter of time before there's a major problem there.
Yeah, I remember one event where we had a severe thunderstorm warning for that area, and people on those high perches didn't even evacuate when lightning was crashing within actually a mile of the race course. So,
absolutely
scary.
Well, and a few years ago, it was prior to April 27th, and things may definitely change post that, since it's in everybody's mind. But we had exactly the same thing. We had a severe thunderstorm watch, and we had a severe thunderstorm warning for the May race, and we issued a warning for a storm approaching. It was complete pandemonium and chaos there. People didn't know what to do. And it was on like a Thursday night. It wasn't on a Sunday, but it was, people start packing the place out a week early.
Yeah.
But it was just complete pandemonium there. So from an emergency management situation standpoint. So
we should mention Brian has his party bus out in the infield at Talladega every year, so he alerts as many people as he can. So let's talk about the FAR. And again, this is coming from Jason's piece in the Washington Post, the Capital Weather Gang. And again, I would assume this is national data, but it's got the FAR over time slowly coming down. It's hitting 78, 79. Back in 2005, 2006, and it's down to 70 in 2015. But Kevin, you've had a remarkable success story in Birmingham. Kind of explain that your FAR is not 70 in Birmingham.
Yeah, I actually looked up the national stats for 2016 as well. I was just kind of curious, and it's actually come down even another point. So it's down to 69% for 2016. So those numbers continue to come down, and there's a lot of reasons why, but yeah, you know what? To be honest with you, the big thing that we did here, and of course, we've talked about it many times, but we just put a high priority on our program here. We made it our number one priority. The Birmingham mission now at our office is just completely surrounds, I would say, severe weather. We could talk about impact and winter weather, but almost every bit of training, every bit of focus that we do here, it completely surrounds severe weather. So we've just been surrounded ourselves with it, and we've tried to put our complete focus there, and it's every aspect of it, because a big thing for us, and I've talked to Dr. Laura and she could chime in on this, but we really believe that the warning process itself is not that last 15 minutes. It starts days in advance, and if people know that the weather's coming, that's their best chance to make good decisions and make prior plans before the storms actually get there. And so that's a part of our mission here completely. But with that, we've made a lot of changes, and a good example is how we staff events here. We staff them hopefully appropriately. We put the best people in the best places for our chance of success, just almost like a baseball team. We basically field a baseball team. So if you play shortstop, you're going to be playing shortstop. And every event we try to treat like the World Series. So we have ace communicators. I've been really proud of our social media presence. It's been second to none. And we have people here who really are dedicated to social media and getting that message out there, because what I preached is the warning forecaster is only part of it. If we sit out there and we issue the best warnings possible, if no one hears them, they didn't go for anything. So we just preach every single facet of our game, that you have to be at a high level for every single, the capacity has to be at a high level, and that includes mesoscale, warning forecaster, communicator. And so we try to staff it that way every single time. So a lot of the same people are in the same positions for event after event after event, so they get used to being there and knowing their key roles, knowing exactly how to stay in their lane and do what they're supposed to. And that's made a huge difference on our warning program here. It's almost 48 hours in advance. You know exactly when you're going to be here and exactly what you're going to be doing during the event. And it's changed dramatically.
Let's talk about your FAR. What's your FAR in Birmingham today?
28%.
28. So the national average is 69.
Right.
You're at 28. So Rick Smith, how are you doing in Norman on the FAR?
Oh gosh, I just looked it up while you were talking, and I was going to be proud to say we're at 64, but geez, 28. Thanks, Kevin.
I'm sorry.
That's awesome. But no, we're about last fiscal year. I just looked at 2016 fiscal year, October to September last year, and it was about 64%. And it varies, from in the mid 50s to around 70, but 64 is kind of an average.
So again, let me go to Dr. Myers, our social scientist here. I never thought we could get the FAR in any one location under 30. What they've done in Birmingham is just unbelievable. What's a realistic goal? And is the FAR really important? A lot of us in the business think it is, but to the person on the street, is it a big deal?
Well, it is. And, we've done a lot of research on that since 2011. And we looked at it with the Tuscaloosa event. We looked at it with Joplin. And, that was a factor for a lot of people, especially if the false alarm ratio had been a consistent problem up to a particular event. It caused desensitization and people were less apt to act. And so one of the things we've done with the research is to go in and find out, well, just how many people feel that way. And I think you guys have heard the statistics before. It's about a third of people who become desensitized. So 2/3 of people, it's not really a factor. They're weather aware, they're trying to stay connected to the information, but it's about 1/3 who feel that desensitization. And so for that 1/3, trying to improve the process is important. And so what Kevin was talking about is really, what we're talking about when we're talking about lead time. There's the official lead time from the issuance of the warning till the actual tornado. But it's the bigger context. It's the outlook. It's the watch, the warning. It's all the communication that's going on through each of those phases. And that information is getting to the partners. It's getting to the public all through those phases and getting them more prepared and more aware. And so that's what's honing down that FAR. So that's what's making it so much better. People are more prepared to receive the information.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we've talked about this before, and I had a thought, that's good, that, the outlooks are better, the watches are better, there's more lead time for especially the big events, when we talk about days and hours, many, many days and hours leading up to the big days, people are aware. But to me, that kind of plays into the false alarm too. I mean, I think I encounter a lot of people here in our area that if we surveyed them, I bet they would think they were in many, many more tornado warnings than they actually are. On average in our counties, I think Oklahoma County, for example, has an average of 4 or 5 tornado warnings a year. But I bet if you ask the average person, they would say it was, who knows, 20, 30, because essentially every time there's a risk of severe weather, we are bombarded with weather coverage from TV, from social media. And do you think people consider that to be, or do people say I was falsely alarmed if they're outlooked for 7 days and that's all they hear about on the news and then nothing happens?
I think it does if there's not a lot of communication in the process. I've been watching this for several years now, and for several of those years, it was just as you described. People, would hear all of that information, and then they wouldn't have the weather, and then they would, say, hey, we were unduly warned. But then over the years, that communication's gotten better with the broadcast meteorologist explaining what's going to happen and to expect it in certain places and not others. And, the storm-based warnings have made such a big difference, trying to hone it down to the polygon. And so people now understand that there's a tighter boundary for the warning area. And so people are understanding the difference between a county-based warning and a storm-based warning. And so that's what the broadcast Mets have done such a good job of explaining to their audiences. And then the Weather Service has done that with their partners. And so I think there's a better understanding of the process now. Not complete, of course. It's an ongoing process, but I've seen it improve.
Yeah, Dr. Myers, I'm curious about that because I don't speak to as many groups as James does, but I speak to a number of groups throughout the year, and I'm concerned. I'm seeing that the understanding of the polygon is not making deep penetration into every audience. I've had some audiences where when I described the polygons, it was something brand new to them. They didn't realize it. What do you think about, I know that it's kind of like changing the watch and warning terminology. I mean, there's arguments for it. There's arguments against it. One of the arguments against it is we do have a lot of education over the last 30 or 40 years that you hate to throw away. What do you think about this need to get the understanding of polygons to a higher level?
Well, I think it's interesting because I do the same thing, Brian. I go out and talk to a lot of people, and I'm always amazed at what they know. Mm-hmm. And so, having studied this for quite a while and, seeing the whole thing with storm-based warnings and everybody's knowledge of that and knowing where that communication is taking place, I'm amazed at the audiences who never have seemed to have heard that communication.
Yeah.
So they're not listening to television. They're not listening to their broadcast meteorologist, maybe, or they're not on social media and getting the information that way. So I think there's where the disconnect is that we're not reaching particular audiences with that information.
And I think we have too many legacy systems that aren't storm-based, like weather radio, in my opinion. I mean, that's the baseline. That's what everybody should have. And weather radio is still, alarming for the whole county. So I think that's part of it.
And once again, James, the problem there is, do you throw that system, under the bus here and get rid of it when a lot of people, that's their only way of getting warnings, especially in a lot of rural Alabama?
Kevin, what do you say? Is weather radio going to be upgraded, or is it going away, or what's the future?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's all going to come down to the money. I mean, do we have the money to upgrade it? I mean, I think it's ready. They put several pieces in place. We used to have this old console replacement system for years and years. It was, looked like it was a computer that was, from the 1950s, and they've upgraded all that now. So they've made a lot of changes behind the scenes on it. It's just now a matter of, I don't know if there has to be new transmitters put out on these towers, and it's, the expense and just the regular maintenance on it now is a very hefty price tag just on what we already have. So I don't know if there's enough demand for it.
Yeah, the problem too, Kevin, is at this point, I don't know of any weather radio receivers that could receive the Polygon.
Well, that's another good point. I mean, Midland would have to go back in and put GPS chips in all the radios, and we've sold so many since the outbreaks of 2011. I want to say, it's been hundreds of thousands of radios we've sold in this state. All of those will have to be replaced. And I think Bruce Jones at Midland would tell you that they're ready to go.
Bruce Thomas. Yeah.
Or I called him Bruce Midland the other night.
I can never keep those guys straight, but he told me they're ready to go with that technology. It's just a matter, but it's going to be more expensive of a radio. So are people it's already $30 now, and how much can people afford? But it's a tough.
Did he give you any idea of how much more expensive it'll be?
I think it was maybe like $5 to $10 more, but now you're talking $40 for a weather radio. Is that out of people's budgets? I don't know. I thought, to me, even $30 seems to be quite expensive. If you think about it compared to, say, something else you'd have in your home, like a smoke detector or something. So
yeah. Well, when we've done weather radio programming, especially in rural areas, and I think $30 doesn't seem to be that much money, but unfortunately for a lot of those people out there, that is a lot of money.
Yeah. Right. But if you live in the state, it's just going to come with it. You have to have one. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Rick Smith, what say you? What's the future of weather radio?
Well, I agree with Kevin. I mean, I think it's, in a way, it's antiquated technology. I mean, the way that we communicate, the way that we get a message from our office to the transmitter is in many cases a hard phone line, which is susceptible to all kinds of problems and kind of a fragile system when you look at it. But it's so important. And we have people in our area that literally is the only way that they have to get warnings. They don't watch television for religious reasons, or there's all kinds of people out there, and they depend so heavily on weather radio. I just wish it was modernized. I wish we could modernize the communication system. I wish we could modernize how we get information to the transmitters and how we monitor for outages and things like that. A lot of that internal stuff that goes on inside the Birmingham office and inside our office, you had no idea. We've got a phone that rings in the office called a Roams that if a transmitter's on low power, goes off the air, this phone is ringing during severe weather. We've got 13 transmitters, and it's a full-time job for one person sometimes to keep up with that. So there's internal things, there's certainly external things. And, you know, if you could wave a magic wand, obviously we want it to be GPS controlled. They've gotten a lot easier to program, and Midland and other companies have done amazing work to make these so much easier to program. I remember going to the mall or going to places and programming weather radios, and it was like rocket science. You know, it was very complex. It's so easy now, but still it's hard. It's hard for people to program them, and $30 is a lot of money for people in our area to buy one. So there's limitations to it. Still a good system. I still recommend everybody have one.
Yep. Can I go back to something real quick about the education of everyone? There's been so many campaigns to educate the public, you know, successful ones, stop, drop, and roll. How about just using 911 for an emergency? Why is it so difficult for us to come up with something that's catchy and just something that we can adapt to help with this problem? I guess I just asked Laura that. It seems like there would be a way to help with this education campaign.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of comparisons to other campaigns, like you said, the stop, drop, and roll. It's got to be something simple. It's got to be something easy. And we know it works. And we also know it works very well with young people. The whole stop, drop, and roll thing was taught to school children. And so they've grown up with that. And so when you see the impact of fire prevention marketing, it's been absolutely unbelievable. And so we need to do the same thing with this. And, you know, it's, you know, turn around, don't drown is one example. And it works very well. So we need to do the same sort of thing for a couple of these other things that we're trying to get across.
And we tried that years ago when Dan Miller used to be a forecaster in our office. He's now the SU up in Duluth. He came up with this thing that we use all the time: get in, get down, cover up. Now it's not stop, drop, and roll, but that's as short as we've been able to make it. And one of the challenges of tornado safety is, you know, if you're on fire, pretty much no matter where you are, you want to stop, drop, and roll. But, you know, if you're in your car, do you want to, you know what I mean? I mean, it's hard to give a universal slogan that captures, you know, because in a mobile home, you don't want to get in, get down, cover up. You want to get out, get away, then get in, get down. You know, it gets complicated. But
one phrase doesn't cover it all.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough.
So let's talk about POD. And again, for those watching, I've showed the graph from Jason's article in the Washington Post. The chance of tornado detection over time has slipped from a peak of 78 in 2007 to 58 in 2015. Again, that's not counting 2016. But Kevin Laws, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just going to look that up while you were talking there. I looked that one up for the numbers for 2016 nationally too, and that had come up to 60. So it's actually come back up to 60 for 2016. POD is probably the easiest drop to explain. Like I said, with the implementation of dual pole during the 2012 year, now you're seeing every single tornado. Before, you'd have to wait on a report or get damaged. Now we're seeing stuff in the middle of forests, and just the overall numbers of tornadoes are going to go up, and things like POD are going to go down, because you're not going to catch, you know, the numbers of tornadoes that are going up are obviously the weak variety. And so with dual pole now, you're seeing every single thing. You can't deny what it is almost. It's that good. And so I think some of that for after 2012 certainly seems to be legitimate in my opinion. So at least from a scientific perspective.
Kevin, where does that need to be? Where does the POD need to be? Does it need to be 50, 60, 70? What's the goal now that we know about every little nitpicking tornado that happens?
That's hard. You know, and well, ours, for example, in 2016 was 74. I mean, I'm pretty stoked with 74, even though everybody here would tell you that my personal slogan is we don't miss tornadoes. I don't like to miss any of them, just because I feel like that's our mission. But maybe I'm a little bit off on that. Just as a meteorologist and a scientist, I don't want to miss. I want to be perfect, and I don't want to get false alarms, and I want to have the optimal amount of lead time every time. We know that's not realistic. So Here's the thing. If you get away from the numbers and let's just talk about, well, for example, go back to 2011. Look at that number, 75. It was one of the highest that we've had, probably ever in the 88D era. Okay, and the false alarm rates were good, lead times were good, but we still had over 300 people killed. So how do you measure that success when you have that number of fatalities? So if our job is to protect life and property and we're protecting life, is that the real number that matters versus these kind of numbers? And I think a lot of our mission needs to probably surround that number versus, if you miss a couple, and especially the weaker ones, is that okay? But, when you have fatalities, and even if you've gotten everyone, and even if you had a perfect warning out and you still had fatalities, it still gets, to you because that's your primary mission. So, but it could be there could be a lot of scientific reasons. I don't really have a good number that it should be 100%, if we want to be perfect about it, but it's just not realistic.
Laura, what do you say from the social science side?
Well, I think one of the issues with the probability of the tornado detection is the public's expectation. We've done so much to educate the public about the warning process. They've come to expect a warning for everything. And so when we start talking about the QCLS and these little pop-up tornadoes and missing some of these, they get really upset, and because they expect it to work the way it's worked in every other event. And so I think that demand is putting a lot of pressure out there. And I think that's another place where we have to educate the public about the science, about how difficult it is at that level. What do we do with those types of events?
And then again, the ones that kill most people, it's these big ones, the EF3s, EF4s, EF5s. And, these zeros and ones, I don't know if we're that good to try and catch these things. And I've said it before, it's just like it's the whack-a-mole game. You see one, you see a debris signature, you put out a warning, and by the time the warning goes out and it's disseminated, it's gone. And so, the TV guys are on there flapping about the tornado that's kind of already gone away, and it's just really hard. And we kind of dealt with that, yesterday around here. So,
hey, James.
Yes,
I would agree with you on that. I mean, the Weather Service has impact-based warnings. Well, I always talk about warning-based impacts. I mean, we could issue a warning for we could get close to 100% POD, but your weather radio is going to be going off constantly. Sirens are going to be burning up motors as they're turning. And we've talked to our emergency managers here, and they understand that there's only so much that we can realistically detect. We cannot catch them all. We cannot issue a warning for every little 5-second spin up that's out there. By the time you get the warning out, by the time you're aware of it and get the warning out, it's gone. So I think there is I don't know what the sweet spot is or what the number is. Obviously, we want to get every one of them that we can, but I'm kind of a realist, and I know we're not going to get them all. There's going to be some of these small, weak ones that are just not there very long. Hopefully those won't cause any impacts, but we kind of have to look at the impacts of this too. The warnings, sometimes issuing a tornado warning can have a bigger impact than whatever the little tornado is itself.
Maybe from a national perspective, if we start thinking about things in terms of what Rick just described there, okay, from a national perspective, is the reason the false alarm rate is so high, is it because we do try to catch everything and we know we can't do that, but in our futile attempt to try to catch everything, we drive that number up? Whereas, I mean, I think the science of forecasting, everybody on this call knows this, but the science of forecasting has gotten good enough now that we can determine which days are going to be the big days from the small days. And on those big days, you don't roll the dice. You put out the warnings and you keep them out. You keep them long, and you make sure you protect people. But on these marginal kind of days and days when you're going to have the weaker tornadoes, I think the science is good enough to maybe we just need to take a breath and relax for a minute and not try to catch every single little thing. And in doing so, you don't artificially drive up that false alarm number so
I agree,
high.
Kevin. I agree. I
mean that's always a possibility.
And so many times you'll issue a severe thunderstorm warning. In the text of that, you say this could produce a small tornado. And you've got it covered in there. But, every time you see rotation, and goodness, you try and catch these little spin up tornadoes, just warning after warning after warning after warning. And before you know it, nobody's paying attention. And we've got to focus on these big ones that kill most of the people around here. And, I think that's very important. So, Lauren.
Well, and realistically, too, even with a severe thunderstorm, winds that are truly 60 miles an hour, it's probably pretty rare for us to get that in Alabama. But there are occasions when we do. A tree could fall on your mobile home just as easily as a tornado. It doesn't matter if it's rotating or not. I mean, you need to take if we issue a warning, you need to take shelter. I mean, that's our bottom line. That's what, our main reason for driving that false alarm rate down was to make sure that people take the warnings serious and take the action they need to.
I did a study of tornado fatalities or weather fatalities in Oklahoma, and we've had far more people killed by severe thunderstorms, quote, straight line winds, than we have from EF0 and EF1 tornadoes by far.
Right.
And if that storm that hit at 5 a.m. on Saturday morning came rolling into downtown Oklahoma City at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, who knows what would have happened. That was a major league storm, worse than a lot of the tornadoes that we see, but it's only a severe thunderstorm, and those they just don't get the attention, unfortunately.
And Laura, do people pay attention to severe thunderstorm warnings?
They do when you do what you just described. When you indicate that there's a potential for tornadoes in a severe thunderstorm, people listen. And when we describe to them that the winds in a thunderstorm can be as strong as tornadic winds, like Kevin said, they listen to that. And that gets back to the issue of impacts.
So let's again, what we're doing here. We're talking about this article that came out in the Washington Post about the fact that lead times are starting to decrease. And the bottom line on all this, is it a big deal, Laura? The numbers that we're seeing in this article that Jason put out, is it an issue? Is it a big problem?
I don't know that it's a problem. I think it's interesting. I think when you get back to the forecaster's decision making about whether they're going to put a warning out, there's a lot going on in that process now. I think that has evolved with the science, with the understanding of the populations that they serve. One of the things that we're studying right now is the forecaster understanding vulnerable populations and vulnerable locations. So when you're trying to make that decision about a tornado warning, thinking about where it's going and who it may impact, and trying to integrate that into your decision. And I think Rick was kind of alluding to that. You're thinking about those populations, and you're thinking about time of day, you're thinking about number of people that could possibly be impacted. And so there's a lot that goes into that decision. So there's a human factor side as well as the science. And so I don't think it's a problem. I think it's something that we're just working on and trying to improve.
So some questions coming in from our listeners that are watching, and this is kind of changing the subject off this topic. So from Twitter, this comment, I hear so many people say it's only a slight risk. We're not going to have any bad weather. What does Dr. Myers think of the SPC outlook wording slight risk?
Well, from a communications perspective, slight is a problem, because people perceive slight to be minor and not a problem, and it's not consistent with what the SPC intends. And so that's an issue. And so again, it goes back to educating again what those terms mean. And the broadcast meteorologists like James spend a lot of time explaining that and explaining what that means for the location. And so I think it is an issue, because the public is always going to downgrade based on those words.
So the question is, we can educate, but does anything need to change here? Again, for those watching, we've got the risk categories up. Now we've got marginal, slight, enhanced, moderate, and high. And the other thing I hear all the time, people think that enhanced should be number 4 and moderate should be number 3 in this thing. Do we need to look at making some changes here? And this is for Rick or Kevin or Brian, Aubrey, anybody, or did we just roll with this and try and educate people?
Boy, this is a whole show, or a whole week, a whole month of shows, clearly. But this has gone round and round. And you know what? And I don't want to. We need Patrick Marsh or Bill Bunning or somebody on here to talk about this, really. But we're dealing with a system. This slight, moderate, and high was developed by meteorologists for other meteorologists back in the 60s, probably. This was never intended to be out in the public. So the word slight was there was no social science that went into that. That was weather geeks talking to other weather geeks in an internal coordination type of outlook. So I don't know. I agree that the terms don't really capture the meaning. I end up having to do a lot of explaining, and different people have different opinions about them. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think if we were to start with a blank slate and start all over, these would probably not be the words we'd be using. But I don't know what the alternative. I don't know what the answer is.
Kevin, what do you say?
Yeah, same thing here. I don't, outside of the green colors, I sort of disagree with using the green. But I like the color scale, so I think the colors are on target for what they mean. And recently we've changed our hazard weather graphics to match theirs to try to get on the same page. It's just simpler for us to change ours than to get the nation to change it. So we sort of got on board with that too, to at least be consistent with the same wordings and the same colors as well. So to help with that messaging. But I'm with you. I think at this point it's hard to bring that back. So, and I think we've at least to some of our users, I think we've finally gotten to a point where perhaps people are starting to understand and relate to these words and their true meaning at this point. So.
And again, one of the things that we've got that a lot of people don't notice, we got numbers now. There's a number assigned to each category. Marginal is 1, slight 2, enhanced 3, moderate 4, and high 5. Sometimes I'll use numbers, which people seem to understand maybe a little better. But anytime I say slight, I try and explain that hey, this is kind of the standard risk here. I mean, this doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen. You have to pay, because most of the tornadoes, I think, down here, Kevin, occur during slight risk, don't they? Uh-oh. I see 2 Kevins down there.
Yeah, I dropped out. I came back.
You're back. But I was just saying, a lot of our tornadoes, most of them seem to happen on slight risk days. So, Brian Peters, what do you say? You've been doing this since the Civil War.
Well, yes, and it's always been a problem, and I agree with what's been said that, when it was originally started, it wasn't really intended for public distribution. It has achieved public distribution, and I have a lot of trouble with that word because the truth is, when they issue a slight area, we almost always have severe weather in it. So the word doesn't really agree, but I don't have a better word. I don't have a better term to add to that would work better. So I do like the numbers, and I'm like you, James. I use the numbers occasionally.
Right,
and I agree. Seem to work when you can give a relative a 3 out of 5 or a 4 out of 5. I think that works. Some of our TV Mets here use that to kind of explain it, and I do think that helps some people. But some people respond to colors, some to words, some to numbers, and so it's good that we have lots of different ways in the system now.
I have to admit, if I'm on filling in for James or Megan or whoever, and there's a slight risk, I oftentimes put up that slight risk and say there's a risk of severe thunderstorms or tornadoes in this area. Don't use the term slight.
Yeah,
leave that out completely.
Leads us down the path, Brian, of the next point, which is a whole. Everything we're talking about could be a whole show here.
Yes,
you've got some outlets, media outlets, private sector firms that don't use it at all. They issue their own convective outlooks with different colors and different words and different terms. And this gets into the question of conflicting messages. And my heart, it's having a simple, unified message across the weather enterprise. And quite frankly, a lot of people have given up hope. They say there's no hope. The horse is out of the barn. It will never be put back in the barn. But within 1 year, in most markets, TV stations will all be issuing their own warnings. They will not be using the National Weather Service warnings. They'll be using Super Doppler Woppler 10,000 megawatt warning that we have that nobody else can do because we're better. And then it's just a total disaster. Laura, can we get this horse back in the barn?
Yeah, I think so. We've talked about trying to get that consistency and efforts to achieve that. And what Kevin was talking about earlier, what their office has done about, everybody's playing the same position in every event, which means the messaging is the same. They're using the same language, they're using the same content, they're using the same products. And so I think if we can get that amongst the weather enterprise and work those issues down, it really goes all the way back to how the public receives that information. And so if we can standardize it that way, that's going to make the better connection with the public. And I think you just got to make that connection.
Let me ask you another question too, because, when we talked about the science, the forecasting science, overall has improved so dramatically that SPCs actually had to go into this 5-scale thing. It used to be 3. Back in the day, it was 3 forever: slight, moderate, and high. And so our forecasting has gotten good enough now that we've broken it into basically a 0 through 5 scale, almost a 6-point scale. But from a public standpoint, is it better to just say, hey, there's a risk for severe weather, or these are going to be basic, everyday, run-of-the-mill thunderstorms? I don't know from a messaging standpoint, Dr. Myers, if it's just better for the general public to understand, yes, there's a risk, or no, there is not a risk today, versus trying to break down that risk individually.
Well, I think it goes to the different audiences. And this is Rick's point from earlier. The general public probably just what you said, severe weather would be sufficient. But then you get all the different agencies and institutions that need more lead time, and all the partners that need more lead time. And they need the gradations in the scale. They need to know those levels of seriousness and severity so that they can enact their plans accordingly. So I think it's different partners, different groups, different lead time measures that are going to need that information. But I think when ultimately it comes down to the public, it does become almost a binary decision: severe weather or not.
Aubrey,
in fact, that's how we.
Go ahead, Rick.
I was just going to say one quick thing. That's how we communicate it. But the people in our area get lots of different outlooks from different sources, from TV, from social media, from Weather Service SPC, and a lot of times it sounds weird, but I just tell people don't worry about the colors and the numbers and the categories and the shades of red and orange. If you're in any risk area, all it means is you need to pay attention. I don't realistically expect a member of the general public to behave any differently in an enhanced risk than I do in a slight risk or a moderate risk. I don't want them to be more prepared in a moderate. I mean, realistically, this is just to raise awareness and tell people, hey, pay attention, severe weather is possible. But that's not based on any social science. That's just how I deal with it. And because people get really confused when they see all the different flavors out there.
Yeah.
Aubrey, go ahead.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Everyone, I teach a class for some lifelong learning thing around town a couple times a year. And, I talk to the public and ask them, what makes sense to you? And every time I ask them the question about slight risk and the risk areas, they don't get it. So what frustrates me is why are we wasting our breaths every time explaining the difference or what a slight risk actually means? Why can't we just ask the public, what gets your attention? What include them in the conversation? So, because ultimately we're not talking to other meteorologists, we're talking to the public. So we need the public's perspective on some of this wording. And I think it is a kind of a waste of time for us to constantly explain. I think there's a problem when we have to constantly explain the definition of a risk. And if we're doing that, I think it needs to be changed, in my opinion. And I'm very firm. And actually lately I've been doing a lot of consulting with some of the public and people, the regulars on my Facebook page and stuff, and asking them, what makes sense to you? Because I want their opinion, because ultimately they're the receivers of all of this.
So you're saying we need to connect with the public again. Do you think we should just have a binary thing, severe weather, yes or no? Go to the simple yay or nay kind of thing?
I don't know if it's simple nay or yay, but I do like using, I think isolated, scattered, and widespread are 3 terms that I think the public gets and is more understandable, basically, when we're talking about, the quantity of severe weather, and I think we need to just be using terms that people get and that they can relate to instead of having to explain the definition of everything.
Yeah, but some outlooks are, I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why some TV stations go differently than the Weather Service is the SPC outlook is basically a number of reports kind of outlook for the most part. It's not an intensity of the storms always, especially in the lower end of the scale. It's how many reports are we going to get? But people are also looking at the outlook for how bad are the storms going to be, not how many we're going to have. I don't care how many we have. If I have one and it's really bad, is that what the outlook's telling me, or is it the cover?
So does that mean the risk?
Probability?
Does that mean the risk area wouldn't be as high in an unpopulated area, let's say Western Kansas, or for some reason, because they might not get a lot of risk damage reports?
I don't think that's the case. I think it's the density of severe weather events. I don't think they're not looking at how many people are in an area and are we going to get reports from this. That's not what I meant. That's not really accurate what I said. It's the density of severe weather events that they're expecting to happen, or the number. Do you think
that's the best way to do it?
That's what I'm asking. I don't know. I mean, that's the way it's done now, but that doesn't always account for intensity of storms. That doesn't always account for, there's lots of factors that go into what people think is a severe weather event to them, and how bad is the storm as one of those. And our current outlooks kind of talk about that a little bit when you get up into the moderate and high risk, but you can have an EF4 tornado and a marginal risk. And I think a lot of people just don't understand that. It's not numbers. The general public, I don't think, cares so much about the numbers of events that are going to happen. It's how bad are they going to be. So
I agree.
It's much more complicated than we can ever put in one word or color or number, I think.
All right. The problem is one scale created, but it's being used for multiple purposes.
Yep. That's exactly right.
So let me call a timeout here. We got a lot to talk about, but we do have to take a little break here because I've got a Professor Peters. We're going to come back with the Weather Roundup. We'll talk more about this subject of weather warnings. We'll do Picks of the Week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
So how about a little quiz to stimulate your brain cells? It's rapidly approaching, and yet we've already had one. So what is it? The answer to that question is the 2017 tropical storm season for the Atlantic Basin. The season actually begins on June 1st and ends on November the 30th. But if you're a real weather nerd, you already know that a short-lived storm well out into the North Atlantic was named Arlene. She persisted for a little less than 24 hours. The rest of the players for the 2017 season will be Brett, Cindy, Dawn, Emily, Franklin, Gert, Harvey, Irma, Jose, Katya, Lee, Maria, Nate. Oh, we'll never live that one down. Ophelia, Felipe, Rena, Sean, Tammy, Vince, and Whitney. So here's another one. When did the United States start naming hurricanes? Well, the answer to this one is a little complex. The U.S. actually began naming hurricanes using the phonetic alphabet in 1951. This plan, however, was abandoned in 1953 when a new phonetic alphabet was introduced. So in 1953, the U.S. began using female names for storms. It is of interest to note that an Australian meteorologist, Clement Ragg, began using women's names for tropical storms before the end of the 19th century. So one final question. When did the practice of naming hurricanes after women come to an end? Well, this has a two-part answer also. It was 1978 in the eastern North Pacific and 1979 for the Atlantic Basin. In those years, a combination of men's and women's names were used. So how did you score? 3 correct answers puts you in the Hall of Fame for hurricane knowledge. If you have a question about the weather, drop an email to question@weatherbrains.com.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Let me just say this show's going to the dogs. Wow.
Aww.
Okay, I know Bear's made an appearance. We had to have Lucy on this evening. Cute. Our new boxer puppy. If she bites me in the neck, I may be going to the minor mat again for different reasons. So She's excited to be here. So,
wow.
She's not scared of storms. So we're proud of that. So. All right. So, all right.
This is fantastic.
I got to go give her back to Mom.
Wow. Aubrey, is Bear with you tonight?
She is not, but I'll tell you, she got out of the backyard on Saturday right around noontime, which temperatures were already 85 degrees. We had high dew points that day, and I had already worked out that morning. And so when she got out, my husband and I just both took off after her. I've never run so fast in my life. And I honestly think she gave us heat exhaustion.
Wow.
Because I worked a little bit in the yard in the afternoon, and I went inside it, and I did not feel good at all. I think she gave us heat exhaustion Saturday.
Wow. Unbelievable. All right. Well, let's do a weather roundup. You are looking, if you're watching, at GO 16, not operational, experimental, not ready for public use. But this stuff's just fantastic. This is this big upper low that's swirling through the Midwest and the Great Lakes tonight. This is the thing that's produced snow in Colorado and parts of the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles and severe weather and flooding. And we've had severe weather today. And Aubrey, I don't think D.C. or Baltimore had much today, did they, from this thing?
No, it didn't look like it. Everything, the storms to the north, I think, robbed a lot of that energy. And boy, did they get it in Pennsylvania and upstate New York.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of damage pictures from up there. It looked pretty rough.
Yeah, I was waiting. They had issued a tornado warning near the north central part of Pennsylvania. The warning did say that it was confirmed on the ground, a large tornado. I think I saw someone tweet a debris ball, but I haven't heard an update on that. And that was very northern Pennsylvania, kind of close to that state border.
Wow. Well, again, Kevin down in Alabama, I'm trying to think. Well, I know that the Huntsville guys confirmed an EF0 tornado in northern Cullman County. Did you have any in your CWA?
From yesterday?
Yes.
I don't think so. I went back and looked, and I didn't see any evidence of TDSs, and I didn't really hear. I mean, we had some straight line wind damage up in the northwest, Walker, and some places over there that had the warnings pick-ins, but I didn't hear of any tornadic damage reports or know of anything. So
yeah, Brian Peters, you were out in it, and it looked like it. All the reports, all the photographs I see, and I get all the pictures. It looked like mostly trees with straight line winds. Brian, don't you think that was the case?
Yeah, and even in Aliceville, where they had some roof damage, some tin peeled off, it was some rather old abandoned buildings, so they weren't terribly. I don't think it took a 60-mile-an-hour wind to do that kind of damage. It was very minor.
I think. What did you see the reports out of Mississippi from early Sunday morning? I think one of the ASOSs over there north of Jackson gusted to 80 miles an hour. So that was pretty.
Wow. You had one of those bookend vortex things coming through there, and it was nasty in Mississippi earlier that morning. And we're fortunate where we are; we didn't have quite as many reports. And Rick, I guess things have calmed down, and it looks like we're kind of getting into a blocked up pattern next week. Cool air coming down into the eastern U.S. Aubrey, it looks pretty cold for you guys toward the weekend. I
know, and we just had an event last weekend that lasted 4 days. We were barely in the low 50s. We were cloudy. We had rain on 3 of the 4 days, and it was just, it was miserable. And I've got, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I've got 5 cloudy days at least ahead on my forecast from Thursday to Monday.
It just looks kind of raw. Down here, it looks raw and cold and
cold
breezy.
Air damming.
Friday,
Get the wedge.
But we got Talladega coming up, and again, Brian Peters will be in the infield in the Brian Peters party bus. If you see Brian,
right.
And Brian puts a sign on his bus: if this bus is a rockin', don't come a knockin'. So I don't know what that means, but
oh yeah, right.
And that's a show title. No, actually, I heard a show title earlier in the show. I don't watch TV for religious reasons. That would be a really good show title.
That's a great one.
I think Rick just uttered that somehow. That was like, whoa, that's a show title right there.
Yeah.
No, down here they call it blackberry winter, and we're starting to see blackberries. And traditionally, we have a cold snap after that happens sometime in early May, and it seems to be this is the one. And our buddies up there in the northeastern corner of my state, in these bowls where the radiational cooling kicks in, they could do some 30s, I think, Saturday morning down here. So that's blackberry winter type stuff. But anyway, let's see, Aubrey, since you're on the line, and do we have a moment for email for you? Well, good. Let's check with Aubrey and see if we got any late-breaking email news here.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
All right. This one came in this evening, I believe, from Josh Adcock. In a listens every week, he comments, I probably will now. So we appreciate that. He would love to go to college at OU in Norman, Oklahoma to study meteorology, but he would have to move back to Oklahoma first. So sounds like a very good choice. And Josh is coming to us from Salina, Kansas. So thanks for sending that.
He can live in Rick's basement.
So
good luck with
for
that.
sending that in. All right. So this next one was from Michael O'Connell. Said that we had some really outstanding shows lately, and also complimented Rick and the crew from NWS. And I 100% agree with this. Explaining the difference between social media hype and really kind of gives a breakdown of what to expect with all of that weather without worrying about ratings. So he definitely commended Rick on that. So thank you, Mike. And this one is from Clay Barnett, who sent us the article about Capital Weather Gang, or from Capital Weather Gang, that we reviewed tonight. And so, Clay, I believe you got the answer to your question of the discussion. And he also says, for every accelerant, quote, Kevin, sometimes Nate or Brian, we need a retardant. And that would be Bill, myself, and Rick.
What did you say?
I was about to say, if they said retarded, that's Brian and me. So, yeah.
No, flame retardant.
I resemble that remark.
Yeah, exactly.
A de-accelerator.
There you go.
And then Daniel Lucas also sent us the same link. So we talked about that for tonight. So I think that is it. We appreciate all of your emails. If you want to send us an email, you can do so at email@weatherbrains.com. Very simple. Send us maybe a cool link that you would like to see, a guest suggestion with all the info on how to get a hold of them. Also, what you like about the show, maybe a topic that you would like to see. Love to hear from you. So send those to email@weatherbrains.com. And we are also on the Twitter and the Facebook. As much as we don't like to be, we are.
And anytime you say that, I got to play.
Let's get social with social media.
All right, enough of that. By the way, I wanted to mention too that the Ghost 16 images I was showing earlier, that is courtesy of friends at the College of DuPage.
Fantastic site.
Victor and the guys up there have just done a remarkable job, and I got a chance to spend some time on their campus earlier this year, and a great crew, and they do such a great job with this, and they just do it for the good of mankind. I mean, they spend a lot of time and money throwing this stuff out there for free. So if you want to see these really cool Ghost 16 loops and images and all the different products coming off the new satellite, they have that available. Not maybe everything, but you think about the data coming off Ghost 16, it's just stunning having to collect this data and store it. I mean, it's remarkable. So again, that's College of DuPage. But let's quickly do picks of the week, and if we have time, we'll kind of kick back to the warning process because I got to watch the time tonight. My pick, it's a ChristianScienceMonitor.com article on the same subject we've talked about tonight, and I threw in my 2 cents worth, and the link will be up on WeatherBrains.com. All right, Rick Smith, what is your pick of the week?
I hope Brian doesn't yell at me for having 2 picks. I'm considering this it's a package deal. They're taped together.
It's a twofer.
I don't care how you package it. It's 2 picks.
It's 2 picks. The Weather Service continues to go through this hazard simplification effort where we're trying to, we've got 122 offices and we got 122 different kinds of warnings and advisories. So we're trying to compact that a little bit. There's a new set of surveys out there encouraging everybody to take, especially WeatherBrains listeners, on flash flood products and on winter storm products. Two of our first targets are going to be winter weather products and hydrologic or flood and flash flood products, simplifying those, paring them down to a smaller number. We got so many flash flood products, I don't even know what they mean. So my 2-for-1 pick is those 2 surveys.
Awesome. And again, the links will be up on weatherbrains.com. Kevin Laws, what's your pick of the week?
Yeah, I want to go back to the April 5th event. That was one rare event in Alabama where we had very large hail. And I had to go all the way back to May of 2008 was the last time we'd seen an event that was that large. It's just very rare in the Southeast to have the giant hail. And I challenged our folks here because I really wanted it documented since it happens so infrequently with all the pictures and all the reports that we got. I challenged our folks here, and we have some really talented GIS people, and they put together these really nice GIS map with all the pictures and reports that we received that day. So I want to give them a little shout out and thank you for doing that for us. So it's really nice to have that historically archived. Awesome. All right, Aubrey, what's your pick of the week?
Well, I also want to give a shout out to Dr. Gensini because on the Go 16 page on WeatherCod, I had sent a note asking the Mid-Atlantic region looked kind of split to me from what we're typically used to. And within a day, he responded and had adjusted the region. So it was just fantastic. So I have to give them a shout out. And my pick of the week is also the visible satellite from Go 16 for the current storm system that we are within now. Obviously, we kind of call it weather porn, just looking at the Go 16 images because they're just so amazing to watch in the afternoon.
Yep. No, I agree. You can't stop looking at this stuff. That's awesome. And again, get that COD app too, the mobile app, the modeling stuff.
Oh, I didn't know they had an app.
Yeah, wow. they've got an app for models, and I didn't know that either until I was up there. And goodness, the products and services they offer, it's just fantastic. Okie dokie, Brian Peters, what you got for us?
Well, since we've talked about it so much, I'm going to go ahead with the Capital Weather Gang's discussion of this same topic so that everybody will have a link to that one since it sort of kicked things off.
All right, Dr. Laura Myers got a pick of the week for us.
Yeah, I do. It's a book that was loaned to me by Ken Horst, one of our emergency managers here at the University of Alabama. It's called The Mighty Whirlwind by David Wagler, and it's about the Palm Sunday tornadoes in 1965. And he recommended the book to me from a social science perspective to see how things were handled during the Palm Sunday tornadoes. And it's a really interesting comparison of looking at how the warning process worked then as it works today. So I recommend it as a good read.
Awesome. I think I should make this email my pick of the week. For those that are not watching, this is one of my one of my haters from the NBA game yesterday. And I can't show most of them because these guys, you throw these F-bombs. I mean, it's horrible, just nasty, ugly talk. But this one says, you ruin a game to hear yourself talk. No one in church hears you, moron. Be a big boy and just shut up. DA, you have websites for a reason. That's from John Lee. So, John, thanks so much for writing. We appreciate that nice word, and thank you so much. So, again, I would love to carry this conversation on here, but my problem, we have to do a 10 o'clock show over here. But this is the nice thing about it is that we're talking among ourselves, and we've got social scientists working on this situation. But the bottom line is, for me, and I'm old as dirt. I am old as dirt. I've been here a long time. Too many people have died while I've been here, and they didn't have to die because they didn't hear the warning. They heard the warning and they didn't do anything. And we've got to be better, and we've got to be unified. We have to be consistent. I'm greatly concerned about call to action statements. You turn on one channel and the guy says, unless you're underground, you won't survive. You turn on the other channel and the guy says, get in your car and drive south. You turn on the other channel, the guy says, get into a small room. We can't even get our act together on call to action statements. And, we've got to be better at this. And I'm worried about people in cars. How many people were on Interstate 20 between Dallas and Shreveport Saturday? When were the tornadoes out there in Texas? Saturday evening?
Sunday.
Sunday.
Saturday.
Saturday.
It was Saturday, right? Saturday. It was the day before yesterday. How many people on the interstate? They didn't know. We're not reaching people in cars. There's so much work to do, but the main thing we have to do is somehow put aside our egos, our titles, our power, our preconceived notions, our know-it-all attitude. And I am the first one to raise my hand and say I'm guilty, and I'm willing to put aside all this stuff to come in with a spirit of humility and say we've got work to do. So, Laura, thank you for your work in this. And, I don't even know if we talk. I don't think I've ever met a social scientist until 6 years ago. So Thank you. If there's one thing you could say to those of us in operational meteorology to help, what's the one thing we have? What's priority to work on right now?
I think just reaching the different types of audiences. It's like you're saying, identifying where the gaps are, people in cars, people in mobile homes, people who are transient. How do we reach them, and what mechanisms do we use to reach them? Awesome. And Kevin, how can you spread this 20 FAR around the country?
Well, I mean, we're going to continue. I think we still have some work to do here, and so we're going to continue with that. But there's been a lot of offices reach out to us on some of our level of success. I know I've even talked to Rick and those guys in Norman a couple months ago about some of the keys to what our success has been. But again, I just don't want to get wrapped around the numbers on this. Our mission is always the same. We can have 100% POD and a 0% FAR, but if we have that one or that one fatality, that's what we don't want to see. So I think our messaging has to be on key and getting those people to take protective action. That's our mission. So not to get the numbers right, but to get those fatalities at 0. That's the number that matters to us.
Yep, totally agree. And I have so much more to say here, but you know what? I am paid to stand in front of a green wall and not looking like this. So got to put on some TV duds and get my act together. But anyway, WeatherBrains is typically on every Monday night at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. Aubrey is the email officer, and often we will answer those emails, even if we don't get a chance to read them. All of our social media accounts are up on the website as well, and a lot of people listened or watch live. We have a video version, and it's live.bigbrainsmedia.com, where you can find us over on YouTube as well. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. God bless. Thanks, guys. I hate to go. This was too good. We could do this a long time. But thank you all for being on the show. It was a great show. Great discussion. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, it was good.